Yo, yo. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the next video. Um, so, you know, with this channel, I'm gonna be posting this on my personal YouTube channel. I also post this on the Instagram page just to kind of get this video out there. What I'm going to be talking about in terms of the field that I'm kind of involved in, there's a lot of people out there that talk about like how to do specific things when it comes to like Pro Tools or when it comes to like promoting and stuff like that, and just like the technicality behind engineering. What I feel like not a lot of people touch on that I want to bring to the table is basically like um the things behind engineering, like what actually, like how to actually make money from this, how to actually like what makes the most sense based on your situation. I've been so just to give you a little background, I've been doing this engineering thing. I've been involved in music pretty much since since childhood. I done the whole thing from even just playing instruments, doing karaoke, all the way to like being my own artist and doing all these things, being a beat maker and also engineering. I feel like kind of like engineering chose me rather than just like it's something that I wanted to do. But over time I've looked up a lot of videos. I know about Pensado's Place. I know about just all the engineers, all the big names out there that do their thing. But I kind of want to touch on like what how to operate things behind just the technicality of engineering, and that's what this first video is going to be. It's going to kind of explain my story too as to what has transpired over like why I decided to do my own thing, and why I run my own studio rather than work for a studio. I also had a commercial studio spot. I'll talk about that briefly, and I kind of want to explain like the ins and the outs versus all three of those things when it comes to working for a studio, working for yourself, whether it's at a home studio like where you live at, or working for yourself and owning a studio. So there's three different ways to kind of go about this. Um, I would say that this video is more so for someone who's probably done the engineering thing for a little while. If you do have any questions about Pro Tools or anything, there's a lot of YouTubers out there for that. But I just wanted to introduce this video explaining kind of my intention moving forward here. I'm going to talk about a lot in terms of like behind the studio stuff, more so almost like borderline like on a business level. A lot of the things here can maybe be translated to other fields, but just based on my experience, we're going to keep it to the music thing and having a studio and engineering. So today I kind of want to talk about working at a studio versus working for yourself. Now I was thinking of a lot of video like titles or title video subjects kind of going in and explaining kind of this new like how to introduce the new kind of format I'm going to do these videos moving forward. And I feel like this one is a good thing to touch on because it kind of gives people insight as to why I made the decisions that I have. If you guys kind of been following me, you know that um, I had a studio back in 22 and kind of went ghost for a little bit because there was a few adjustments that needed to be made, and now you see me back on with a different background running the studio from my crib essentially. So yeah, working at a studio versus working for yourself. Let me just explain kind of my background. So I started off kind of working, just doing it for free, just working at the crib. People kind of heard about it. I wouldn't say like there were like friends. None of my friends really rapped, but people kind of knew I had a studio, so the word got passed around, and maybe friends referred me to people that ended up working with me. So that's how that got into it. Um, did that for a few years, and a lot of my experience comes from working for myself. I ended up working at a studio back in 2022 for about a year or so, and I learned a lot about like the nuances that come with that. So I want to kind of explain this here, and based on a person's situation, no way is better or worse. It just depends on what fits your situation. So let's start off at working at a studio. So I kind of organized these notes. You can, follow along. You can take the notes. I just kind of wrote this for me as a guideline to not stray off too much, stray off the subject if I end up going off on tangents. But yeah, so a lot of engineers they like, to work at studios. That's how the engineers about, like that's what they did. They worked at studios, whether they interned there for a little bit, ended up working there for a few years, getting their name out there, exposing, and that's what I want to kind of go into, like the pros of working at a studio, because there's a lot of good things about it, but you just kind of got to know like what your worth is and what working at a studio, what value that can bring to you versus what you can bring to them. So the first like pro of working at a studio obviously is networking. So you're going to meet a lot of new people. You're going to be a lot of different situations. You're going to learn a lot about how to conduct yourself in a studio situation, especially around people that you don't know and that have a certain expectation. You know, when people are coming in and paying $70 an hour, which is a lot more than you would charge if you were working for yourself, especially like in the beginning, there's a certain there's a certain expectation that's had there, and you got to know how to conduct yourself in those situations, and you can learn a lot off of that. But if you know, the more you do it, the more you learn it, the easier it'll get. And we can make another video about how to actually conduct yourself. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Just try not to do too much and try not to be like the person that thinks is right all the time. Just go with the flow, be like water, Bruce Lee, and everything will be good. um and if you end up doing a good job and you end up, uh, you know, being able to give them a product, a quality product, your name will spread a lot quicker than you'd think, you know, because people tell people, and when people are playing each other's music, the first thing is like, where'd you record that at? And who'd you record it with? And if you did a good job, easy way to get your name out there, which, you know, ties into the exposure thing. So when you're doing networking and exposure, especially as an engineer, you know, that's the this is essentially the game of it, being able to get your name out there. Now the most powerful way is through word of mouth, you know, and there's no better way than doing that at a reputable studio that, does nothing but say good things about you. So you get a lot of networking off of that. You meet a lot of artists, you know, you uh, get a lot of experience in, as well as you get exposure. So then, you know, especially whatever city you're in, people start to hear about your name. You start to hear about people that hear about your name. So you walk into like random places. You know, sometimes people just are like, "Yo, you're that dude that engineers. You know, let me get your number. Let me get your information." You know, it just starts to happen on its own. So these are kind of two things boiled into one. You know, I kind of wanted to separate them because they are different. The next thing, sorry if my notes. This is the first time I'm doing these types of videos. First and foremost, so bear with me. It's gonna get better as time moves on. Is this red thing? All right, cool. The next thing is basically you get to work with better equipment. Now, this is more so for the engineer who doesn't have the access to already quality equipment. Fortunately for me, doing this over years, I've acquired, quality pieces of equipment to be able to work with that helps me. But if you're just kind of getting it into it, or you're trying to kind of have access to better equipment and you don't necessarily have like the budget to invest in like a $5,000 mic or like a $2,000 interface, um, working at a studio really gives you that experience to work with high quality equipment and hear the difference between recording on a $100 mic and recording on an $8,000, $5,000 mic. There really is a difference, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, it's not about the equipment; it's about the engineer and the people using equipment," which is true. But there's a certain extent that that goes to. I mean, when you're recording with a, you know what I'm saying, TL, not a, with a Neumann, whatever quality $5,000 mic, can't even think right now. Um, that mic will actually, in a good sonically treated room, will do a lot of the work for you. You will be surprised, and you'll hear a lot more of the EQs and the compressions that you apply when you're not only working with better microphones, better interface, better cables, all that, but also better speakers. So, a lot of people, they have a problem hearing what they're actually editing or what they're actually tweaking. But when you're in this type of environment, you really get a good grasp of um, how it's supposed to sound, how compressors, how EQs, how different microphones are supposed to sound. It's not like this guessing game thing. It's for people who've done it for a while is clear as day. You can hear just the clarity and just the presence based on whatever type of equipment that you use. So, um, if you've been doing this for a while, if you know what you're doing, and you maybe even have some clients, but you don't have the equipment that you feel like is gonna get them that that product that they really are gonna appreciate, I would recommend working at a studio. Another very important thing that's helped me out working at a studio is you get to learn from other engineers. So, I had the fortunate I was fortunate enough to work with some pretty decently experienced engineers, and they've been doing this in my city for a while. I'm not going to bring up their names because I don't have permission, but it really helped me level up as an engineer and kind of reassure me that what I was doing was right. Sometimes you'll be like, especially when you're doing this on your own at the beginning, you don't know like if what you're doing is right. You don't know if your process is right. No one's telling you what's right from wrong. So it's like you're kind of building your own process and figuring out your own lane kind of thing. And then you go to a studio and you compare your process with someone who's been doing this and has been getting paid and doing this for a living full time and their process, and you can kind of see where you're at compared to them. Now, the studios that I worked at weren't like some high end hit factory, like countrywide known studios. They were kind of a little more on the low key side, but you go in there, see like what the people are looking like, what it's working with. Even the more local type studios. There's a lot of good engineers, a lot of good people that know things that you can learn from, and you got to always go in as a student. When I worked at a studio, I was already over 8 years in the game, but I go in like I'm a beginner, like no matter how long you do this, at least for me, I almost feel like I always don't know exactly. Like I know what I'm doing, but I almost feel like there's this mysteriousness to what I'm doing. And just going there, learning from an engineer helps reassure and clarify like what you're doing. So that's a good thing. So those are the pros at working at a studio. So let's delve a little bit into the cons now, because currently I'm not working at a studio, and there were a few reasons why. I don't know if I just kind of made these notes like in the begin, like 10 minutes ago, so I might be missing a few things. If you know of any pros and cons working at a studio, working for yourself, just ahead of time, leave it in the comments. Subscribe too if you haven't already. So let's go into the cons. So the first thing that came to mind, which was one thing that was more or less a deal breaker to me, because the studio I worked at was about like 45 minutes away. And the whole structure behind studio is sometimes you'll just get it's not like a normal job where you have a schedule at the beginning of the week and you just go in, when you're gonna go in. You don't know in the beginning of that day what sessions you're gonna get. So like, you know, the nature of the scheduling with the studio is like a lot of it is very on the spot. Like, all right, we got a session, you want to run it type stuff. It's not like ahead of time. Yeah, like, you can have a few good clients that give you a heads up a few days in ahead. And studios can have policies where, you book the session and you need at least 24 hours in advance. There's a lot of these types of things that can help with this, but ultimately, um, even past like trying to make it work for you, you don't set your own hours. You know what I'm saying? You're at the whim of the studio and the clients that they get. And, I mean, I'm sure, some studios you can um, accept or decline sessions, but most studios, especially if you're trying to prove yourself at first, they want you need to be taking all the sessions that you can get. You need to get your foot in the door, you need to secure yourself. And I mean, even working for yourself, it's not going to be pleasant, on the hours. You're still going to be working long nights and all that stuff. But with a studio, it's just, you're not your own boss. I mean, it's tough because it's almost like a barbershop. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, like it's your own kind of freelance type of work, but essentially you still have to be there. You still have to, there's still an owner there. There's still a manager there. There's still people there that are like running the operation day to day, making sure their engineers are hitting certain quotas and making sure that's things are doing. So, that can actually be something that people might want. But for me personally, I like the ability to set my own hours. So I put that under something that I just felt like wasn't as like something that was as desirable for me. So that's that. Um, the other thing too. So even though the studio charges more per hour than you would if, say, you were to work for yourself at your own home studio, you're not getting paid as much hourly. And I'll go into this maybe a little more later on in the video, but basically there's so much being broken down between having to pay off the studio, paying off the owner, paying off the people who just work there, like the receptionist or the manager if they have that. By the time it gets to you, you're only making, especially if you're not accredited engineer stepping in there with some leverage, you're making $20. I've seen engineers making $15 an hour, you know what I'm saying? And with sessions that are paying $60 to $70 an hour. So it's just like, you know, you have to kind of accept that and be aware of that going into this. So, all the splits and everything that's, yeah, you're getting more work, so maybe it breaks even, but you're spending more time to make less rather than just having a few clients and maybe less time but you're keeping more of the money that you make. So it's a personal preference thing. All of these things are personal preference. This is kind of like how I categorize it in my own head. So to each his own. Next thing, or and this is different from the first point, and that's that the time blocks are strict. So this may be a factor or not based on the type of engineer that you are. A lot There's some engineers that are very, like, whether they're at a studio or not, very strict on their hours. Um, so it doesn't really matter. But for me, I like to over deliver. So whenever even someone books a 2 hour session, especially if they're new or if I like them or I like their work, I'll always do my best to over deliver. I'm never trying to like scam. I'm never trying to scheme an artist. I'm never trying to just like hustle these people. I'm really trying to over deliver every time. And for me, I feel like a lot of that comes with being able to say, like, you ran your 2 hour session or 4 hour session, and you're at the end of the last track that they want to do, and they just want to do maybe like a layer of ad libs or some dubs or something. When I was working at a studio, it was a lot more difficult, and the energy was weird when these types of situations would come up, because you have the other clients that are there for the next session already in the lobby waiting, and you're trying to give these artists, like, great value, good value for what you deliver. And I understand the studio, like, time is time, like, once that time is up, it's up. I get it. I'm not sitting here complaining about that. The type of engineer I am, though, is I'm more of a flexible, like, I work with you type engineer. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the type to really go on time, because time constrains you. It kind of takes you out of that moment. It's good to be aware of the time, but the type of style of engineer that I am, I like to, like, kind of be a little bit more in the moment. Yeah, I'm aware of time, but if something needs to get done and we're there for another 10, 15 minutes or whatever, so be it. I'll do it, for the sake of, giving the artist or the client good value, as well as just, like, they don't have to come back and do, what I'm saying? Just, it's all over with. So that's one thing that I noticed when I was working at a studio that kind of was like tough for me to work with, but you get more used to it. When you do work at a studio, it does teach you to kind of work within a timely manner. So that's a very important thing. But for me, as someone who likes to, like, just always over deliver, I like to have like that extra 10 to 15 minutes just to make sure that everything's good, like, even just chopping it up with the artist type thing, just being able to really establish some sort of rapport, some sort of relationship, so that, you know, they fuck with you past you just being some engineer. And the last thing that, and this is with anything, is that ultimately, when you work at a studio, you're replaceable. You know what I'm saying? You can't really do. I mean, studios are pretty lenient. You could do what you want to do, but just know that there is a line that's at every studio that if it's crossed, you're going bye bye, and you're gonna get replaced. And there's always 10, 15, 20. There's always a number of engineers waiting to take your position. So, you got to be aware of that, and you got to be on point. You got to be on game. You got to know what separates yourself from the game and double down on that. But at the end of the day, if the owner doesn't like you, if you're having a problem with something, if something happens, whatever, and you're running the studio session, um, you're able to get fired. You're able to be replaced. So just take that in mind. All right, so that's this part for working at a studio. I try to make it even, four cons, four pros, whatever. So now let's get into working for yourself. So this is kind of how I evolved as an engineer. I mostly worked for myself. I worked at studios from time to time. I came in, I helped, I whatever, this and that. But ultimately, I got a majority of my experience working for myself. And I've learned a lot through that whole thing. Just being able to learn, like, from being able to learn how to communicate, which I'll talk about in this section, from learning how to communicate, from learning how to work with different relationships, from managing and budgeting your time and also money. There's a lot more that goes into working for yourself than just going to a studio and just getting the sessions done and making your money. um but it's a lot more rewarding. You know what I'm saying? You have a lot more longevity to it. um you can't be fired. There's more flexibility, a lot more things that happen. But getting this off the ground and even keeping it off the ground can sometimes be tough. So let's get into it. So the pros, like I was saying just now, you get to set your own hours. So especially like for me, I like to recommend everyone that's getting into this, um, keep your day job. You know what I'm saying? Until this can replace your day job totally, plus some more, I would say to keep your day job. You never know how you're gonna feel. There's gonna be times, and for me, the type of person is like, this whole grind is tough. It will wear on you. You'll have nights where you're up till 6 a.m. in the morning till the next day. You know what I'm saying? All jumbled up with your circadian rhythm. And being able to set your own hours really helps kind of mold this hustle into where you want it to fit in your life. It kind of helps you set your own lifestyle with what you want to do. Because for me, I don't just engineer. I'm not just your normal engineer. I also, I go to the gym. I have other hustles that I do. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'll get into like my own thing here, like moving forward. But setting your own hours really helps, especially if like you have other obligations, you have other things going on. Um, Goes without saying, setting your own hours it's self-explanatory as to why I feel like that's a pro. The next thing, you get to keep more of your own money. So this is actually like, yeah, this is actually the biggest thing for me. But in the beginning it's going to be tough. You know what I'm saying? If you are just getting into this engineering thing and you're just starting to kind of build people that are hitting you up, you're gonna do a handful of sessions for free. I'm just gonna say that straight up. Maybe you'll get paid $20 a session because you're not feeling like recording a session because you got other shit going on, whether it's school or another job or something. And they're like, "Yo, bro, I'll pay you like money." Give you $20. I was 18, 19 at the time. I didn't really give a fuck. So you know, everything that is made from the studio you get to keep. So it's a lot less time to make as much money as you would in a studio. But that comes with also like it's your studio, so a lot of the money you're going to make should be reinvested into the studio. um for me, like, money is money. I would invest my money from my job into the equipment for the studio, into a better environment and stuff like that. But yeah, being able to keep more of your money and being able to just not have as many hands in that bucket really help kind of get things going. So yeah, that's something that I really felt like was appealing to me as to whether or not I wanted to work for myself or a studio. Next thing, can't be replaced, can't be fired. You're your own boss. You know what I'm saying? The only person that is stopping you from this is you. Um, it's a very empowering thing when you realize that, like, no matter what happens, you always have this in your back pocket, like, to make some additional income with. No one can take it away from you. No one can tell you what to do. It's a very empowering thing, and I'm sure there's people on here that have felt that or gotten a taste of that. And once you understand your worth as a person, as an engineer, um, you'll realize like this, like all these points, like this is where your power. This is where your power is. This is where like you can apply it to. So not being able to, being able to, or should I say, being able to just kind of set your own schedule, do your own thing. You have your own boss. You can choose who you want to work with. It's I don't know. For me, just those things like kind of tip me over on this side of how I wanted to approach engineering. And the last thing is that you can expand. It's a business, so it's more than just going to a studio. You can build this up. You can end up getting a commercial studio spot, and you can also build your own team. You can also train your engineers. You choose your team. It's your energy. Your business is a representation of your vibe, of your aura, of your energy. So you have um I don't even want to call it, like, you have the power to really build your own thing here. So working at a studio, it almost gives you the tools to do this. And you can kind of see, I feel like it's good to work at a studio just to see how studios are ran. But ultimately, there's nothing better than, just having people there and seeing like this kind of system be built on its own, and it becomes something that's bigger than you. And there's nothing more fulfilling, and this is why I'm doing this now, is like I have all this knowledge, it's time to pass it on. Nothing more fulfilling than seeing someone else shine from like something that you created. And it's like it's all just that's what this is. That's what life is. It's just you build it for the next person, that person builds it for the next person, that person builds it for the next person, and so on. That's how like this thing works. It's all, everything is the same, you know what I'm saying? It's just a matter of just being able to weigh it out in your mind what exactly like you're trying to do. All right, so those are four pros, just like we did on the last one. So now let's go into the cons, which I think I only came up with three. So like I was saying, if you guys come up with anything else to add to this, leave it in the comments, please. I would love to just kind of get your guys' take on what I'm talking about here. So the cons is that, when you're working for yourself, you're starting from nothing. So, you got to build this from scratch. It's going to take a little bit longer to build your clientele, to build your reputation. You know what I'm saying? So at first, you should not worry about trying to just like when you're first doing this, you should be doing this just because you do this. You shouldn't be worried about like the business or building this and that and reputation and clientele. You're literally just taking one session at a time and just trying to have a good time with it. You know what I'm saying? And from there, what I'm saying, when they see that your intention is pure and they see that, what I'm saying, you're really just trying to better yourself each session. The length of time that it takes to build this is dependent on you. So it takes as long or as short as you want to. It's in your command, you know what I'm saying? But when you're first starting out, you're not going to just get a paycheck. You're not going to just get, even if you market yourself, you're not going to just get clients rolling through the door. You have to build yourself up, build your reputation. People have to know you're real. People have to want to really work with you. You have to be someone that people want to be around. You know what I'm saying? Takes time to build yourself in that way. So yeah, so if you're willing to kind of go through that, um, you know, I feel like this is something for you, working for yourself or a studio. Another thing which could be looked at as a pro or a con, but in this case, I just put it on the cons because it's not as simple, you know what I'm saying, as working for a studio. So like this is something to take into mind, is that when you're running a studio, it's not about it just engineering. It's not even about just music. You know what I'm saying? Like you're essentially a business person. So you have to know how to communicate. You have to know how to be organized. You have to know how to market. You have to know how to promote. You have to know how to do all these things. And all those subjects in of itself is a rabbit hole to go down too. So, you have to overall be a well-rounded individual to be able to make it working for yourself. Because if you're a good engineer but you don't know how to communicate, you don't know how to talk, people don't want to be around you, it's only gonna last so long. You can only build so much off of that. So but if you have all these things, nothing can stop you. You got your business right. You got everything in your computer organized. You got good equipment. You got good communication skills. You got effective marketing. You know what I'm saying? And you're consistent. Nothing's gonna stop you. So that's something you have to take in mind. It takes a little bit more time to develop those things. You're gonna have to go into studying other people outside of music and engineering to develop these qualities. But once you have them, it's yeah, it's another level of empowering. You can translate those skills into anything else. Whether you want to stay with engineering or try to be involved, doing other things. Oh, snap. Hold on a second. I got my homie texting me. Sorry, this is a very informal interview or whatever, very informal video. So just bear with me. All right. So yeah, takes a little bit longer to build. You have to have multiple skills in other fields to be able to excel in this. And the last thing that I want to touch on about working for yourself is, and these things are known, I'm just trying to make it more concrete for you so you know exactly what you're getting into. But the last thing here is that it's more money. It's more money to, there's more money that's required to set up the studio and buy the equipment and get everything going. If everyone could if everyone could just get in and do this, everyone would. There's a reason that there's a lot of beat makers, there's a lot of artists, but engineers kind of come far and few between. Not a lot, especially engineers that have their own equipment, that can like work for themselves and have like that personal connection with you. It's a lot of investment. You have to really put your money. You have to really you have to really put your money where your mouth is. Okay. Um, I'm not saying you have to know exactly where this is gonna go, because for me, it kind of like unfolded as I went. I wasn't sure what was happening as it was happening. I was just kind of seeing the road be laid out for me, and I was always just kind of into equipment, so I never had a problem buying a more expensive mic or a more expensive uh, interface or mixing or whatever it's called, a console, or even a nice computer. I've always been in equipment. You have to be kind of like a techie guy. You have to be into that type of stuff, and yeah, you can't look at this necessarily as like a business. You have to just enjoy genuinely like good, like nice equipment. You have to enjoy like good quality, like making good quality music, and it's like you're ultimately not just an engineer, especially when you're working for yourself. Like you're hosting an experience. You're like a part like a you're hosting a party essentially, like a controlled party, and there's a lot of elements that are required to be able to successfully host a studio experience. Because all of this boils down to an experience at the end of the day. You also have to know how to preserve your equipment, take care of your equipment, make sure the artists are acting in line, and that comes with your vibe too. How you carry yourself will dictate how you treat yourself, and how you treat the studio will dictate how the artist will treat you and the studio. So, I'm going off on a tangent here, but ultimately, it's gonna take some money to get started. But when you're just first starting out, you don't need to buy like the best stuff. Like I was getting consistent clientele, and I didn't even have a Focusrite. I had like some $99 M audio fucking interface, and I had two like 3-inch monitors, but those things slam. But they connected, like hear this, they connected to my interface using an aux cord. I didn't even have like what's it called, quarter-inch jacks or anything like that. I just had like some basic aux cord with like I wish I took a picture of this setup, but I had like a $99 thing, and I like the aux cord which kept on plugging. I had to like fucking tweak that. You know what I'm talking about. You had to like tweak it a little bit just to get it right, so it like feeds the audio clearly. And then I had some broken down ass HP laptop that like I think like a friend like just left it at my crib on accident, and I just ended up using that as my studio, or my main like computer to run the studio with. And that was pretty much it. I had some cheap headphones. I was actually recording on FL Studio at the time. I wasn't even using like Pro Tools, which I still feel like FL Studio is a great recording software. But you don't necessarily need a lot of money to start. But as you progress, and as you get better, and as your clients get better, and as your clients get bigger, you're gonna need to have like those certain types of equipment to be able to make them stick around. Otherwise they're just gonna go to a studio and that's that. But yeah, so these are kind of the few things that I've weighed out in my own head just off the top that I feel like people should be aware of when trying to dictate what your next step is, whether you're already on this path or like how you even want to approach this path in general. But I kind of want to go more in depth as to working for yourself, because there's two ways to work for yourself. You can have a home studio work for yourself, or you can have a commercial spot, which I did down the line after I had my home studio. If you're just starting and you're just kind of getting into this, I definitely recommend, if you have your own room or you have your own crib, working out of your house for now, until that gets too big, then consider a commercial spot. But if you're just getting started and you're trying to build your clientele or whatever, just keep it at the house. What up? All right. So I want to get into also now like what the pros and cons are of having a commercial studio spot versus working from your crib. Both have their necessary reasons to do so, and it depends on your situation. But you know, that's for you to decide. This I'm just kind of here to lay out the points as to what I guess what the factors are whether you own a studio, like a commercial spot, or you're just renting it from your house. So I'm gonna go into the pros and cons of that. So when it comes to owning your own like studio spot, there's a few pros, okay, and this is the reasons why I got the studio spot for the time I did, is that for one, no neighbor problems, okay. There's a certain point where the studio got like too big. There was 10, 12 people coming every night. It was almost a party every night, and I was still good, you know what I'm saying. I'm not over here like drinking or anything. I'm still like being professional. It's just like there's just a lot. It's just growing. And there was a point where like, the neighbor like literally like freaked out like 3 in the morning, banging on the door, sounding like the cops type shit, like yelling on and all that shit. And it almost got like the whole operation shut down. So, if it gets to that point, or if you live in a place with like thin walls, those like new complexes that be built in like a year and they just are all flimsy. um yeah, I would consider maybe outsourcing, finding a different spot. I wouldn't, maybe like, if you can't like necessarily get like an office space or anything like that yet, maybe like a friend spot that that has maybe like some space for you to set up at, that also like does music or something like that. But yeah, if you have a spot and you're trying to run it from your house, obviously with the music studio, it's gonna make noise. Just be aware that neighbors are gonna be a factor. Another thing too, this is especially when you start to grow, and that is that it's a little uncomfortable sending your address out to people. People are gonna end up having your address, they're gonna be asking for your address, they're gonna be sending your address to other people that are pulling up. You don't know exactly who's pulling up. There's people, they say there's 3 people, end up 5 people end up showing up. It's a little bit sketchy, I'm not gonna lie. Personally, for me, the way I carry myself, the way I am, maybe it's like the energy or whatever, I never had any problems, and nothing was ever stolen from me. I have over $15,000 worth of equipment. None of that was harmed in any way. I never had a mic get ruined or anything like that. But it is a risk, especially when people know this is where you sleep. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got $15,000 worth of equipment. Don't matter if you have like a lock on your door or whatever. You know what I'm saying? You got windows here. You got people like, you rub one person off the wrong way, especially in this game. You don't know what these people are capable of. So, just be aware of who you send your address to. And, you know, don't just don't just assume everyone is like, you know what I'm saying, like this perfect person. Just be aware, and just move with caution. So it's another thing that is a factor that I would consider if you're running a home studio, or having a commercial. With your commercial studio, you don't got to worry about none of that. What is at work stays at work, especially if you have like kids or a woman or something. I had a girl for a certain amount of time. It was tough to have a home studio and have a home studio, run this business, and have like a personal life with my girl. You know what I'm saying? Um, and the last thing too is it's easier working with a team environment. You know what I'm saying? So if, say, you end up growing to a point where you need an extra engineer or 2 engineers or whatever, um, it's a little awkward just to have like people that work under you come to your crib and just are chilling there, especially like even when you're not there. Um, I could see that really becoming a factor if you have kids, or you have a woman, or some sort of family members or something like that. But when you're working with a team and you have other engineers and you're developing, you're already at that level, which it's gonna take some time before you even get to that level. Um, yeah, having a commercial spot is definitely easier. I would even recommend, maybe like before getting the spot, talk to like whoever you potentially see bringing on to and making some sort of team, and see if all of you guys can split the budget, whatever like the rent is and all that, because it'll make it easier for when the expenses and all that come in. Um, so those are the pros. I don't know if I explained that in a way that seemed like it was a pro, but these are the pros if you have like a commercial studio spot, is that you won't have neighbor problems. You don't have to send your personal address out to anyone. And, if you have a team of people, it's easier to kind of like really lock in with them at. So, okay, so that's the pros. Let's go into the cons now. So the cons, it's a given. More monthly expenses. You're already spending a lot of money on the equipment. When you're running it from the house, you're already paying rent to live there. So it's not really like you're adding any expenses on top of your living expenses other than the studio equipment. Because like you gotta understand, like it's not just you're buying the equipment. You have subscriptions to plugins. You have certain DAWs. You have a whole conglomerate of software that you need to invest in that have monthly expenses too on top of the equipment. So it starts to add up once you really start to do the numbers and do some number crunching. A lot of monthly expenses, especially when you have like a studio spot because you have electric. If you're running water through there, if they charge for water, you have that too. You have the rent in itself, and other things too. I mean, if you're having a studio commercial spot, I luckily had a brother, so like he had his own equipment. I had two brothers, so they both had their own equipment. I had my equipment. We had three studio setups. Imagine if I had to invest in all of that myself. Commercial studio spot is like a whole nother level of like once you're in that chapter, you know what I'm saying? You'll know when it's time. So yeah, that's one thing that I would be mindful of when getting a studio, which y'all should already know. Um, which ties in the next one. There's more contracts, more leases, more obligations to uphold. There's just more things that are on your mind that you have to think about. That is just like it just takes up your mind. You don't can't just wake up and just work on the studio. You have to like calculate your expenses, calculate your revenue. If you're not meeting that, you have to get sessions in now it's like you have to just take any session you get. I like the idea of like selecting the clients that I work with and not having to like just take everything I get. So that's just me personally. But yeah, there's a lot more things to just think about when owning a studio. And another thing too, which ended up being something that I didn't think would have been a problem at first, but it was kind of like just getting annoying at a certain point, especially if you're going there like late at night, is that you have to travel to the studio. God, my handwriting is crazy. Sorry. But just traveling to the studio. I mean, my studio wasn't even that far, like 10, 15 minutes away. But like when it's 3 a.m. and you're just trying to chill and you just finish the session and you're just in that mode, you don't want to have to pack up all your shit and then drive another 10, 15 minutes, like just to get home and get comfortable. Having the home studio for me, fortunately, I set my life up to where I can do this from where I'm staying at right now. But yeah, having to round everything up and get back to the house and all your equipment from the house is at the studio, so your house you can't even really make music in. It was just I felt like I was spreading myself too thin. So, if you have a commercial studio spot, just know that, it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot to just commute to, coming there and back to. If you're gonna meet someone at the studio, you have to go there. You have to, what I'm saying, keep it clean. You have to do all this stuff. But yeah, traveling to the studio, keeping it clean, all that stuff. It's a lot more upkeep to maintain. So that's pretty much it. Those are my pros and cons versus from working at a studio, from working to yourself. And when it comes to working at yourself, working for yourself, it's what the pros and cons are from having a home studio versus owning your own studio. So um, yeah, yeah. I try to make it simple, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth into that. Last thing I do want to talk about though is what situation, like what's the right situation to work at a studio? Like what I'm saying? If you're at a certain point in where you are, you have certain studios around you, you're interested in getting this experience, when does it make sense? So so I made a few bullet points here. I'm gonna make this quick because I already know this is going a little longer. Where are we at right now with this? We're at 43 minutes. Oh my god, I'm gonna have to cut this down. But basically, I feel like you should work at a studio if the studio is reputable. Okay, if the studio has good reviews, if it has good reputation, things like that, definitely consider working there. Just for the experience and just what I'm saying, to get that under your belt, things like that. I feel like it's really good to just kind of like work with other engineers, meet other artists, put yourself in an uncomfortable situation so that you just you know how to embrace the uncomfortable situations. Um, Quality equipment and other engineers to get experience. So I said that, but basically, yeah, you get to work with better quality equipment. If, like I was saying, you're in your beginning stages, or even in like even if you're already well into it and you want to work with like maybe a $5,000 $10,000 microphone, or you want to work with different preamps, or you want to work with different hardware compressors or things like that. Working at a studio really helps you give it really helps give you the experience of working with maybe outboard gear equipment, a patch bay, things like that. You really kind of get the idea of it, because it's like, for me to own a patch bay here and hardware compressors and preamps and all that stuff, that's just OD. I mean, we live in an age now where technology, a lot of it can be done in the box. So I mean, I tend to stick to that. I have things that model the hardware versions, plugins, but just having that experience working with hardware really helps give you kind of an edge, in my opinion, as an engineer. Um, Another reason to work in the studio is, like I was saying previously, if you have neighbors that are having issues with it, work at a studio, find your nearest studio, work at that, keep building your experience, keep building your reputation. Most studios, especially if you get like cool with them, they'll let you stay there. They'll let you do what you want. They'll let you mess with the equipment. They'll let you do things that you can make it feel like it's a second home, essentially, if they like you and they trust you and you trust them and it's a good relationship. So that's something to consider. And last thing too, which I feel like is a very important thing, is it's a good resume builder. You can put this on your resume moving forward with studios, especially with clients too. You can also tell them about your experience working at different studios. And even if you do videos like this, you have just more to speak from. You have more wisdom, you have more knowledge, more experience just to be able to pull from when you're doing this. So that's something that I felt like was something that I really felt. That is something that I really felt was something I didn't realize, I guess, in the beginning. When to work for yourself. So, um, I would say you should work for yourself if you already have an established clientele. I mean, it goes a double edged sword, because I would say, like, you should work for yourself when you're first starting, like when you're first kind of getting into this, and you just have maybe a friend or a friend of a friend that records and stuff like that. Work for yourself. You know what I'm saying? Um, Always be mindful of establishing a clientele for yourself, even if you're working at a studio. I think that's the most important thing, because once you have that, no one can take that away from you. Um, your equipment meets a certain threshold of quality. So as you're going down this path, if you don't have the good equipment and you have like artists that are starting to hit you up, and like artists that are a little more reputable, have a little more like clout or buzz around here, um, you want to put them on better equipment. So you don't want to sell them short. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're charging, say, 45, 50 an hour for a home studio, but you only have a Focusrite and like a $300 microphone, you could be the best engineer in the world. And I'm sure you can make it sound great. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure songs will still do well with cheap equipment. But, at the end of the day, you give them what they're paying for. And if they're paying premium prices, you want to record them on premium equipment. So if you don't have the equipment to be able to hit that next level, just work at a studio. You know what I'm saying? Have like that option. You could still you could do both. You could work for yourself and work at a studio. And until you get that money to buy the better equipment, just have that option to work at a studio and with better equipment there. Um, if you need more flexible hours. So like I was saying too in the beginning, if you have a job, if you have two jobs, if you have a family, if you have other outside obligations that restrict your schedule, I would say try to focus on the going and working for yourself route. It really helps being able to, for me, I work two jobs on top of doing this. So working for myself and being able to like make adjustments on the fly really helped me be able to stay consistent with this. And the last thing is you have a good environment for running a studio business. So, you know, a lot of people I know may not have the luxury of having like a spot to record at, that like have neighbors that are not acting crazy, as well as like, maybe you have a woman that is tolerable of it, and maybe you have like the kids are maybe used to it or not. But, a lot of the time, what I'm saying, it's like there's always some sort of factors there that make it a little bit challenging to totally run a studio from your crib. But if you have the good equipment, if the people who are living at the crib support it, um, and it doesn't mess with the energy of the studio session while it's happening, totally work for yourself. I feel like I don't know. I just feel like working at a home studio, it's a different level of comfortability. It brings a different aspect to it, and I feel like artists actually do notice that in a weird way. So that's pretty much it for this video. Just pretty much talking about the benefits of working at a studio versus working for yourself. If you guys have anything to add in terms of the pros and cons, or anything to add in general to what I explained, please leave it in the comments below. Like I said before, subscribe, like, share this, all that. I hope I was able to bring some value to you guys, and until the next video, I'll see you guys soon. Peace.